Ladies and gentlemen, we must continue. It's my great pleasure to introduce to you now our next speaker. He's got one of those names which you can get wrong. You know, it's either Stephen Simons or it's Simon Stevens. But I'll go for the Simon Stevens this afternoon. But you answer to anything, don't you, really? Stevens, no, Simons. Official title is as follows. I had to write it down, I'm afraid. I do know, but I'm going to get it wrong. The honorary, or is it the honourable? It's the honorary, isn't it? Curator of the Ship Model and Boat Collection at the National Maritime Museum. Now, you might think that's potentially boring, but it absolutely isn't, because I'm telling you something. We all venerate a little boat called the James Caird, don't we? It's like one of those extraordinary moments in history, as we've been celebrating anyway. If there's anybody on this planet Earth that knows anything about the James Caird, it's this man. So you're going to get an extraordinary insight now, something that you'll never otherwise get, because we can see right inside the boat, thanks to technology and this gentleman here. If you do visit the boat in the flesh, as I'm very lucky to do and others in the UK can do, by visiting the boat at Dulwich College in South London, you'll only see, I say only, you'll see the real thing, but you'll see most of it hidden. The interior you'll never get to look at. This man crawls around inside it. His middle name is Termite. Over to you, over to you.
Thank you, Stephen. Simon. Stephen or Simon? Sorry. Just to put you slightly right, I'm not an honorary curator. I'm curator at the museum, but I'm honorary curator of the James Caird at Dulwich College, and I'll explain that later on in my talk. Firstly, many thanks for inviting me over here to talk to you about this very, very special iconic object. It's something that's very close to my heart. I pretty much lived with it for 47 years since I've been at the museum, so I do literally know it inside out, and we'll know more about that later on. Just to sort of briefly give you my background, I joined the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich in London back in '78 as a trainee assistant curator at Department of Ships, surprise, surprise, in a maritime museum. And from day one worked with the Ship Model Collection, which has been an absolute privilege, working in an institution like that with a collection amazing, dating from models from 1800 BC right the way through to, a container ship built last year, and within that range you've got a whole breadth of models. So I live and breathe ship models, as well as I curate this small boat collection. We've got 150 small craft in the collection, coastal craft, and during my time at the museum I had the honour of looking after the James Caird when it was on loan to the museum, and again you'll hear more about that shortly. So it's been a fascinating life with the model collection and the boats collection. So that's me shortly with the museum. So my interest really comes from a sort of curatorial stroke conservation background that regards with the boat, because over the time I've moved it from here to there, which you'll find out about in a short time. So hence the title, it's we all know about the boat journey and the incredible feats of survival and planning and leadership associated with this story. I mean, I don't have to go over that again and again. It's an incredible story post Shackleton as to what happened to this boat. It really is, and that's what I've been listing these years, and also seeing what was done to the boat, both during the expedition, after it, and since it's been exhibited at the museum, and then latterly at Dulwich College, which it now rests. So just a few facts and figures. Let's just get the first slide onto the... There we go. As you can see here, that's the James Caird on the Endurance, rigged in its davits, which is how they were carried on these ships, launched over the sides. That's one of the two Scandinavian cutters, Stamcombe Wills and Dudley Docker, and then on the other side, on the port side, this is the starboard side, you've got the motor launch, which wasn't used when the ship broke up and sank. It was too big, too heavy, completely unusable. So they just concentrated their efforts on the 3 boats. Interestingly, the boat measures about 22.5 feet long, and I thought it'd be really good to give you an idea of the size of this boat. Okay, so it actually.
Menson is not here, but with Menson and the founders, we spent a lot of time thinking about it. So, kind of rough timelines. We would hope by April to have all the marketing collateral ready, and I was talking to Mark to bring aboard a professional fundraising team to talk to the heavy hitters, the global philanthropic funds who can think.
As I say, it was carried on board the Endurance.
Quantify the benefits.
And it's in its davits there. So this is before everything it sank.
A personal interest of mine, I'm involved in a
it was
global economic
carvel
summit
construction, so it was a typical lifeboat. So it's double-ended, so it's pointed at both ends. It didn't have a square stern or a transom. The planking on it was carvel construction, not clinker. So carvel is where the planks are joined edge to edge. Clinker is where they overlap. Okay. And you can see there's a great shot here of the James Caird still in its davits with the boat, with the ship heeling over in the ice. And you can see the double-ended features here of the hull itself.
She talked about the future of cities. We're big on stability. We're big on sustainability.
So the story goes, the ship sank. I hate to gloss over this, but you know, it's I can feel him on my shoulder saying, "Hold on a minute, wait a minute," you know. I've got to focus. I'm looking at that over there. So they're on Ocean Camp, floating around on the ice, and obviously the carpenter, Harry McNeish, Chippy, had to make modifications to the lifeboat, as we know. So to make it be able to carry more equipment and make it more buoyant and for crew, he decided that amongst them they would raise the sides of the hull by 3 planks. Now, to enable to do that, you've got to add additional framing here to the existing framing of the boat. So this is what we call the gunwale here. Okay. This is the bow or the stem post, and you can see here they've had to raise the stem post, and then at the stern you've got the stern post here, and you can just see here on the metal strap that's called the keel band. So that would go round the stern post, the keel, and up onto the bow here to protect the hull when it was grounded on sand or beach or whatever. So you can see that they're slowly raising the height here of the boat. And then again, we've all seen these pictures of the camp and them hauling it over the ice on sledges to launch into the inlets that cleared amongst the ice flows and things. I mean, to put it on the sledge, they actually added a plank around what they call the bilge, the turn of the hull, to strengthen it and to make sure it wouldn't get damaged. You'll notice also, because they raised the top sides, they had to make a new rudder, because obviously the original rudder would have been too small and you couldn't steer it using the yoke, which is this piece of equipment here with tiller lines on it. So,
and looking forward to lots of other events. We had a lot of friends.
So, jumping ahead slightly, this is on arrival at Elephant Island, and as we mentioned before, these are the 2 cutters here, the Stamkin wheels, and you can see here where the planking has been paid with a mixture of tar and Marston's oil paints to make the hull watertight. Okay, and there's the good old James Caird in the background, with the crew hauling it above the high water mark, so that when the seas came in, they won't wash back into the ocean. So when I look at these photographs of the boat, I can actually see the boat today in terms of the repairs and what's happened to it, and you'll see that later on. But again, further modifications were made to the hull. You've got the ship's carpenter here, McNeish. The stern of the boat, you can just see here, sorry about the shake here, you've got the gudgeons and pinnacles that support the rudder from which to steer it. But again, you can just see here one of the crew inside the boat without any of the ballast and the equipment, and he's up to his chest. So once the ballast was added and all the equipment for the great 800-mile journey, it really brings it home as to how much, or how the lack of room there was below decks. So this is obviously the launching of the boat and getting ready to sail round to South Georgia, and they ferried the bags of ballast out, but with the other two boats and the stores. Now, obviously, there are a couple of incidents when they launched the boat, one of which was the bung, and that's a wooden plug in the lowest point of the hull of a boat, where once the boat is drawn out of the water, you can drain the water out. When they were launching it, the bung popped out and was floating around in the bottom of the boat, and they were going, why is the boat filling up with water? And it suddenly worked out that the bung had been dislodged. So anyway, they found the bung bobbing about inside the boat, popped it back in the hole and bailed the boat out, and all was good. I mean, it's just, just a minor thing, really. And it's a good job it happened while they were launching it. I mean, if it happened on the journey, And here we are. Now, they had a couple of oarlocks or rowlocks fitted on the deck here and here. And you can see here a great shot of how the deck was laid across. They used old timbers from the boats and packing cases, and then they covered it in canvas to keep it watertight, which was a great idea. But then when on the journey they were sailing with the snow and ice, it became like a skating rink. It was absolutely lethal because they had to go on topsides to chip away the ice off the rig to stop it from becoming top heavy. So they lashed a couple of oars on the shrouds, which are these bits of rigging that hold the mast in position here along here, so that if they did have to go up on top, they could actually just climb on deck and hold on to these in horrendous conditions. But they had to go out and get rid of the ice because it'd make it unstable. This is a drawing out of one of the books published on the James Caird, and you can see here that once you've got all the stone ballast in, the equipment, the sleeping bags, there's not a lot of room to try and survive, or let alone sleep. I mean, you're being tossed about, you're constantly being drenched. There's no comfort in any way on sitting or kneeling on stone ballast bags. Believe me, I've done it, and it's really painful. But to endure that time at sea in those conditions, in that cramped space, with a stove going, soot everywhere, I mean, it must have been absolutely unbearable. And then the Yelcho, which came and rescued the crew. Again, we've talked about this previously, and this is how the boat was brought back and eventually taken back to the mainland, South America. Aboard this ship called the Woodville, which arrived after a 7,000-mile journey in 1919 at Birkenhead Docks. So that's how it's found its way back to the UK. And then it was transported by rail down to and placed in the grounds of Middlesex Hospital, which we can see here. Now, this was used for a number of fundraising efforts by Shackleton to raise funds for Middlesex Hospital. So we've got a shot here, really, and this is really important from a curatorial perspective as well as conservation. You can see the condition the boat was in terms of what was left of it. You still got the foredeck here, which still survives today under the replacement canvas decking. The stern decking's completely gone. The hull is obviously quite battered. And they've taken down some of the planking. You can see here, that's the raised planking there, but this is back to its original configuration. The mast is in position with the clamp. And then this was another outing, which was on December 1920, when it was taken to the Albert Hall for another exhibition on a sort of steam lorry trailer. I mean, we wouldn't transport a boat like that now, I hasten to add. I mean, I've done some things you'll see later on that are pretty hair-raising, but that takes the biscuit. And then this is on top of Selfridges. Again, like you put a boat on top of Selfridges on the roof. I mean, it's just incredible. But again, publicity, I mean, we all know about Shackleton and publicity, fundraising, getting the word out there. And it's no wonder that he was so well known and well regarded. And then John Rowett, who was one of the financiers of the Shackleton's expedition, he eventually acquired the James Caird. And this is a shot of it in his house at Edy Place. in 1922 with the kids playing in it. So, and again, you can just see here some of the internal damage which still survives today inside the boat. So, and we'll pick that up slightly. Now, incredibly, during the war, Dulwich College, which is where the boat eventually ended up when Rowett presented it to the college, was bombed. And just to the right of this building was a little outbuilding in which the James Caird was sort of displayed, and I use that term loosely. It was basically just a cover with some rails on. So it missed being completely destroyed. And this is where it is on display next to that building, where post-war. And it was one of our former directors at the National Maritime Museum that saw the boat languishing in the college, and he offered to take the boat, put it on display at Greenwich and get it conserved. There's a great shot there of the hull and its current condition then, complete with a couple of sledges which are now at Dulwich College, mounted up in the cloisters where the boat was stored. And then when it came to us, the museum in 67, first of all it came in this condition here, straight from the college, and then latterly in 68, 69, we set about restoring it back to its seaworthy journey condition, where we raised the planking, we covered the deck, had a new suit of sails made, replaced the shrouds, obviously the mast. We're not sure about the mast as to whether it's original or not. The jury's out on that one, but obviously the mizzen is not. And you can still see here, it's still in progress in terms of restoration, and I need to get a move on here. So, in 74 it was put into storage, and then for some reason it found its way to our education facility in the museum called the Half Deck, which was literally next door to our Polar Gallery then. And this is when I first came across the James Caird, when I joined in 78, and I was introduced to the boat, like you do, by one of our eminent polar historians, Anne Shirley. And she said, "Oh, do you know the significance of this boat?" And I sort of went, well, I'm willing to learn. So this was when I first came across the boat, and it was undergoing restoration by the museum at the time. And this was when I physically, because I was about 3 foot nothing when I joined the museum, they sent me inside to do a condition check, which was excruciatingly painful, trying to kneel on these steam frames below these sledges. They didn't even know the sledges were in there. So anyway, that's all been resolved now. But you can see, to a certain extent, the original condition, and then you've got the restorations going on, without giving it too much away. So once the boat, that half-deck situation was closed down, the boat, which was on loan to us from the college, it was never acquired by us, was returned to the college, and that's where I come into it again. We had to physically get it back into the college in this covered area in the college called the cloisters. So it's an open area which is glassed in, where it was put on display, as you see it now here, on these stones which were gathered from the Falkland, South Georgia, and also from Norfolk, Stephen, sorry, so I gather, which is now illegal. They're very precious about their stones up in Norfolk, which is quite right. This was the problem we had. Every time the boat was moved, and believe me, it was moved, we had to lift it up, put it on a cradle, and then ship it out through those doors. This was its first public outing in the early 80s when it went to the International Boat Show at Earl's Court. Harding done it. You might know Harding done it. He wrote the book on Shackleton's boat, the James Caird. And then this is where I came in to a certain extent, because when the boat started going around the world to these various exhibitions, we had to de-rig it, pack it, and then stick it in a container, which, as you can see here, send it off by sea, which would take 3 to 4 weeks, depending on where it's going. I then met at the other end, unpacked it, rigged it, and off I went. The unfortunate thing with this is, because it was so big, it was always the first object into an exhibition and the last out. So I never actually saw the exhibition in its entirety, which was a real shame, but no complaints. So you might recognise this picture. This is when it first came to exhibition at the American Museum of Natural History in New York, which was a very successful expedition. And you can see we rigged up a trolley to transport it and covered it in polythene. We had to close the road off to get it in at the back of the museum, which went down a storm with the locals, I gather. But there we go. Right, I'm just skipping my notes. That came to, that was in 1999 at the American Museum of Natural History. And then latterly, in 2000, it then came to Washington, D.C. to commemorate another exhibition about polar exploration, and also Caroline Alexandra's book launch as well on endurance, and was really well received there. And you can see the problems we have trying to get it in and out of buildings. This is probably the most stressful moment when you're moving this boat. And believe me, it's getting a bit old now. It's getting a bit creaky, so one has to be a bit careful. So this shows us lifting it up and getting it up to the upper floor into the building in Washington, the National Geographic. And that shows it on display where they recreated the sea on the panels with a sextant. You can actually take a sighting, which sort of recreates Worsley's amazing work that he did in navigating the boat on that amazing sea journey. We did another Race to the Pole exhibition at Greenwich. This is the Queen's House, the museum. Old Royal Observatory, which is coming up for its 350th anniversary, plug, at the museum. And then it went down to Sydney, to the National Maritime Museum in Sydney. So it's a well-travelled boat. I mean, thinking back now, I wish I'd signed up to Air Miles, because I would have raked in some serious free flights out of this boat. I mean, since it came back from South Georgia and the south, it's put in some serious mileage, probably more so than it did when it was down there. So, but that's just one of those things. Again, this was a very nervous moment here, because we pulled it out of the container, and as soon as it comes out of the container, the custom guys are on it straight away, checking it for things. And just up here, whoops, let's go back one, sorry. Just up here, I was walking around the boat, and I noticed that a wasp had been trapped between the boat and the polythene. Now, if the customs guys had seen this, it would have gone into quarantine for 6 months. So I thought, right, what am I going to do here? So I just casually strolled up to the boat and just sort of leant on it like that. And just covered the wasp up. And I said, everything okay, guys? And, yeah, fine, no problem. So once they'd walked off, I just squat down there. And what had happened was, where we wrapped the boat in Dulwich, in polythene, the static had picked up a dead wasp, unbeknown to us. Nervous times, nervous times. Not as nervous as the sea journey, but, you know, we all have our nervous times. And again, it's just getting it in the same procedure down in the Te Papa Museum in Wellington, New Zealand. Again, they did Great Sea Journeys exhibition. So you can see this boat has put the mileage in. This was a bit more hair-raising, because we had to get it up 4 floors through a gap in the building, and it's just absolutely incredible. Right, and there's the 2 relieved and happy curators of the exhibition with the boat in place. Like I said, first in, last out, that's the exhibition. That's all I saw of it, but, you know. So once it came back from there, at Dulwich, they decided they were going to build a new science block. And they had a great auditorium hall around which the classrooms are built, which they were going to call the James Caird Hall. And I was called in to advise on how to set it up and get it in the building. And this was the route in that we took, which was a bit of an afterthought, if I'm honest. But I raised the logistics of getting a boat of this size and fragility in. I also designed a travelling cradle for it, which it didn't have at this time. I wish we'd done this earlier, because it would have been safer and better for it to be transported. So it's got jack-up wheels on it here. It's got bilge supports here. It's got keel blocks and everything. So and because this was the old method of moving it, jacking it up, putting it on its cradle, and then we literally wheeled it round to the new science block in through this gap. And bearing in mind, this was a building site. There's no flat floors or anything like that. It was mud and rock. And this is its current position in the James Caird Hall, where we raised the floor. I had to do a waterline survey of the hull to get an outline that they'd cut into the floor with lighting below, and then they've got this plastic glass to give the impression of ice, which looks pretty cool. And that's the finished result. You can come and see the boat at Dulwich College by request. If you go on their website, there's a certain time when you can visit. It's not open to the public. But if you want to come and see it, give me a call, and I can organise something for you. So I've been the sort of honorary curator on behalf of the college, looking after this. I periodically clean it every year, make sure it's in good shape. And then these are some of the aspects of the restoration work that you can see here. I've had to repair the torn decking up here underneath the canvas, get rid of stains, because when it was in the cloisters, the roof was leaking, so you got tar coming down. Not good. And then when I was cleaning the boat out, obviously a child had left a little calling card. I don't know where it came from, but it's now in the archives at Dulwich College, which I thought was quite sweet. And then we often get visitors coming over, all sorts of people who come over. And this is my good friend Rob Moore, who's in the audience from the Explorers Club, just to give you an idea of scale. So, okay, right, part 2, very quickly. This is where technology... Right, so, slow down. I'll try not to go too fast with this because it will make you feel sick. But anyway.
Is this on a public website?
It will be. Now, I'll just add here that this is a world premiere, okay? The first time we scanned this boat, I showed this video at the 150 at the RGS with Steve and co. But what we've done now is that these points around the boat, we've added these notations. So that tells you what's going on in terms of, the repairs. And if you click on this, and you can play with this online when it becomes live, and I'll let you know, you get a really good idea of the close-up of the exterior. And you can go round, and if I just close that down here, you can, with a mouse, you can go round it like this. You see these little circles on there? That gives you your walk round. So you can basically, think you're walking around the boat like that. Go away, that's it. And let's see if I can click on here. There we go, that's it, right. So you can explore all these areas of the boat, where I mentioned about these are tingles. So these are patches that were put on the boat where it was stoved in or a leak. And it's a lead covering, which is then stopped from inside and made watertight. And then, as I said earlier, about having the bow raised. So you can see here the stem head has been increased to take the extra planking. And that's the original ruffle hole here, where they put the rope through for the painter and the grab line when it was a lifeboat. Right, I'm going to let you explore the outside because you can do it in person. But what is really cool, do you want to do a cut? Thank you. I'll just close this down and pick up the... And action. That's it. So this is inside the boat, okay? So no one sees this apart from me and a couple of other people. And again, we've done exactly the same sort of program. You can see where all the alterations have been made, as well as the modern restoration. So I just click myself around here. So that's what you get from behind of the copper or lead tingles, those patches I mentioned, to make the hull watertight. And I've been able to map some of these damages to the hull with some of the historic photographs that we all know about and have seen. I'll just swing it round. So that's the view looking towards the stern or aft. So this is the mizzen mast here. But bearing in mind, this is an empty boat. There's no ballast shingle in it. There's no packing boxes or anything like that. This timber here, this round mast, this is from the Stanton Wills, which was added before the journey to South Georgia to stiffen the hull up. It was put in to act as what we would call a keelson, which is an extra support for the keel. There's another repair there. But the really cool part is when you, when I try and call to the bow, which is pretty tight. So if we go forward here, you can see here where you've got original frames. These are the original frames. This is the modern planking that was added by the conservation in the museum. And then we can zoom forward. That's the original decking that was added when they did the journey from South Georgia, from Elephant Island to South Georgia. So there are original parts left. You can see here the mast with its clamp. There's the mast clamp. I mean, I don't want to spoil it for you, but you can play with this online once it becomes live. So, but I suppose this is my legacy, really, to just getting the boat out there, both internally and externally, and saying, you know, to the world, this is an icon. We need to look after this and treasure this. Thank you very much.
This is where I like to pull Simon's, Stephen's, Fred's leg. You'll find that if you do visit this wonderful little boat, it has James Caird written on it.
Oh, yes. I know what
It should be J. Caird. So, explain yourself, sir.
Well, it's down to our conservators, basically, because there isn't any evidence that James Caird was painted on it, as we know. It's
Yeah.
J. Caird.
Yeah.
Even though the other two boats have got Stanton wheels on them, you know, and their full names. And we don't know why this. We don't know why this is, and we're still looking into this. I'm trying to find the records, the conservation records, where it was repainted. It was done. The original conservation was done by a professional boat repair yard on the Thames, Corey Barge Works, in the 80s, in the 60s, I should say. Sorry. And when it went to the half deck, you saw that picture of it, sort of half in wooden paint. There was obviously something going on there in terms of painting names on. Sadly, the guy who surveyed it and who repaired it in the museum is no longer with us. He was a good friend of mine, Reg Farrell, who was their head of conservation. So I can't even go and ask him, unfortunately. So I'm still sort of trying to get to the bottom of this one, because I think every time I've done this, and you always sort of raise it, bless you, to try and bottom this one out. But believe me, I'm going to certainly find out what's going on. So the plot thickens. Watch this space. I'm going to need this. I'm so dry.
Love to put the man on the spot. That's great. For some considerable time, I've been involved in writing for the journal. I'm the editor of James Caird Society Journal, and it's been a pleasure and also a bit of a labour. And right from the early days, I came across a certain gentleman who I'd never met called Shane Murphy. He was a mystery to me. He's not now, he's sitting here. Shane is, I think, probably the world's expert when it comes to Hurley, and his extraordinary photographs in particular on the Imperial Transantarctic Expedition. And even though Shane didn't know me in those days, he may not even remember this, as the editor of the journal, I started to be in touch with him by email to say, do you mind if I mention some of it, or reproduce some of your articles that you have on your website, which is phenomenal. So it's a great pleasure for me to give you the opportunity of listening to this master on all things Hurley. Shane.
Steve, thank you very much. And I'd like to also thank the organizers and sponsors while we're here. Let's acknowledge them one more time. Okay, so iconic endurance images. Iconic, should be iconic, should not be iconic. And we're just going to fumble through that and find our way around. Here's our main man, Frank Hurley, the man who took these photographs. On the right, you can see what Shackleton wrote about him partially. Very grateful about his contributions to the expedition. I think it would have been a much different expedition if Hurley had not been there. Photograph and business card. Okay, we have these are the we have 3 small vest pocket type cameras that took nitrate roll film. We have 4 glass plate cameras, and we have the cinematograph camera. We also had a micro cinematograph camera that you never hear about, you never see, and I don't think there are any pictures from it either. Down here on the lower right, that's what we have as a result of all these cameras. We have prints with negatives, and then we also have standalone prints, hard copies, no negatives, and then we have the same sort of situation with lantern slides. As regards Hurley's work ethic, On the top row, Shackleton decided to try to cut his way to the lead ahead, which is shown in this picture, the middle upper picture, on 110 years ago yesterday. 110 years ago today, we have the middle section being cut out, and that was also Shackleton's birthday. But we don't have a birthday picture of Shackleton because everybody they were so tired they just went home, went to bed. Okay? And on the 150 years ago tomorrow is the bottom two rows of images, and that's just Hurley at work doing his thing. We have James by the magnetic hut, we have ice flowers, we've got Worsley in comparison to some pressure ridges, and then at 4 o'clock in the afternoon we have the grand soccer match out there on the flow. These are most of the Paget color plates that were exposed on the wreck and also rescued from the wreck. There were autochrome plates, also a large collection of them that are still on the bottom of the ocean, apparently. I want to talk just about 3 of these. The upper left, you may be familiar with that photo as a monochrome, as a book cover or frontispiece or something like that, but it was originally a color photo. The photo next to that is a little bit of a mystery to me until I read Hurley's diary for about the 100th time and noticed that he wrote about building a cupboard on the deck, now to keep his cameras in. Now, why would he do that? Well, because if he took his cameras downstairs into the warmth, you had a lot of problem with condensation. It just wrecked the internal mechanisms and made the film very difficult to work with, all that. So he just made, right there under the box of canned potatoes, what we have is this box right here, and I think that's the cupboard he was talking about. And we also have a nice work area next to it, and we have a clean shot coming and going from it. The only thing about this is it really wreaked havoc with his hands, because all the work he did on his cameras, he did barehanded with fine chemicals, little tiny screwdrivers, all sorts of specialized equipment, and his hands really suffered from that. The other Paget plate I want to talk about is the one on the lower right. What's this a photo of? The picture's not in the boat's not in the middle of the picture. There's no action here anywhere. Well, I blew it up just to find out, and the first thing I discovered was that there's a stairway leading from amidships down to the ice with a banister. Here it is again a couple months later behind there. We're used to seeing pictures like this, but this did not happen until the August disturbance in the ice took the stairway and the banister away. So for most of the time this ship was stuck in the ice, we had the arrangement that you see on the left there. Okay, but what's really happening in this photo is if you look up in the rigging, you see an awful lot of wires just hanging around up there, right? What's that about? Well, here's how the wires looked when they were fully in place, and these were the rickers, and the rickers were long wires that were put up on the top of the ship for receiving shortwave radio time check signals. They never received any signals, and the rickers were only up there for about 2.5 weeks before they were taken down. On the left, you see a picture, a very interesting picture to me, because you actually, this assembly up here you see, and you see these wires going back, that's the rickers, and that's where the rickers start. But here, you have the effect of the flash that was exposed to take the picture, and also you have ghost rickers almost coming forward, right? And that's just a reflection off the flash is what that is. But that the rickers picture was taken, the picture before this was taken in late March, last couple days of March. This photo was taken right about April 1st or 2nd. And we know that because I said the Rickers came down after a couple weeks. So this could not possibly have been taken at midwinter in June. But the thing is that, by the way, that's a hard copy in Hurley's, what's called his Green Book, his own little souvenir album of the expedition. And he wrote that date in there because after the rescue, well, he could take it around and he could show his friends and say, this is just what it was like in the middle of winter. But that's not when the photo was taken, just saying. Okay? And I mean, okay, but I mean, it does make sense in a way. Now, in this picture, the full frame is exposed. It is, you can't really see the Rickers or what's going on, but it's all nicely cleaned up and the hawser is still exposed from the side of the ship. This picture, which we looked at earlier, this one's from the RGS. You see it's nicely cleaned up. There's postage stamps. Here's some now. Postage stamps of this. Okay, it's also book covers, frontispiece. I mean, this picture is used widely and extensively. But just so you know, this image comes in 3 varieties. Okay, so if you were writing a book, you need to decide which picture you want to use. And they're in different locations. You just don't go to the Hurley store and get the picture. They're all over the world. There's no concise collection of Hurley images. RGS, yes, has quite a few of them, but that's not the end word, as it were. Okay. This photo just knocked my socks off the first time I saw it. I thought, holy Lord, look at this thing. It's unbelievable. It's brilliant. You know where all those wires from the Rickers went? A couple months later, they went to spread out all over the ice to spark the flashes that made this photo possible. And I think Hurley admired and respected and loved this picture more than the Rickers picture because it was one of 12 contact prints, among others, that he made in Punta Arenas. These 12 pictures, along with all the others, but these 12 pictures as a package went on the Yelcho to Valparaiso, then overland to Santiago, where they were handed off to someone who put them between the pages of a gardening book, who put the book in a box and the box in an attic. And these pictures were not discovered until only a few years ago. So they're over 100 years old. In Santiago, Chile. And here they are now when you hit, I think I hit the auto levels already. Yeah, and you see they look almost brand new, right? The one that I like best is the one on the upper right because he hasn't straightened out his perspective yet. The horizon line's crooked in the original print. See that? And he's finally fixed it later. Here we have 3 photos in one. We've got Bobby Clark, we've got James Wordie, we have what Wordie wrote partially wrote in his diary. We have his diagram of where the camera was placed and where it's aimed, and it's aimed right back here as indicated, right? And in this picture, we have an awful lot of books that we don't know about in Shackleton's, what we call Shackleton's library in his cabin. But more interesting than that, we have 2 pictures from South Georgia hanging on the wall. Here's the first one behind Bobby Clark, right? A king penguin chick. And right here, see the lamp here? Right behind the lamp, we have another picture from South Georgia Island that Hurley took these pictures, developed them on the ship, printed them on the ship, and they were hung on the wall when they moved into winter quarters. Sailors in the forecastle. This is a picture you frequently see in books, but this is not the picture that was taken. Here's the picture that was taken, okay? But Hurley has actually, this is a glass plate at Scott Polar. Hurley has actually incised this, scratched it deliberately so that he's cut out McCarthy with Mrs. Chippy right here, and whom we think is Bakewell. And also, one of my online correspondents tracked down the poster that's hanging on the wall here. And I can only say that if I was stuck in Antarctica, I'd have a poster like that hanging on my wall. This, I think, is one of Hurley's most powerful pieces. This is October 28th. It's the morning after the ship was abandoned. This picture, you rarely see it anywhere. You know, and this is quintessential touchstone endurance material right here. And I like I say, it's one of Hurley's best pictures ever. Also, when you colorize it, you can really bring this scene to life. And I always think when I look at this, well, what else do I need to know about this expedition? You know, there's the whole story pretty much. And we also have a special guest appearance in here from Mrs. Chippy. See Mrs. Chippy right there? Okay, that's the last we're going to see of Mrs. Chippy. Mrs. Chippy's going away. Cape Valentine, Elephant Island. We're familiar with these. To me, the most important photo here is whoops, I'm sorry. Let's go here. This is, the Dudley Docker here has just pulled in. It was, remember, it was feared lost in the storm the evening before. And here it is, it's just pulled in. This photograph only came to light about 25 years ago. But people are still in the boat, and the oars are still in the boat too. So that's photojournalism right there at its very best. This is a composite. You don't want to use that one. The one on the left you know about. It also has an official version with pretty clouds. Okay. The one on the right you don't. I mean, you see it, but why? This is the one you want, and it only exists in two places, at RGS as a lantern slide and at Mitchell Library in Sydney as a lantern slide. There is no negative to this, so far as I know. It only exists as lantern slide. And what's happening here is one of two things. They are either drilling their way into the deck with the method and means that Hurley suggested that Harry McNish put into practice, made reality, or they have already drilled at least one hole, maybe two, maybe all three, and are stacking what they're getting out on the ice beside them. Rampart Berg, sailing past on the left. Before they're beset, Rampart Berg's about 8 miles in the distance. These other three were taken on a trip Wordy, Worsley, and Hurley made to Rampart Berg. This photo was taken in late January 1915, but the ship always ends up in front of Rampart Berg. And this has an official version too that's backwards. But really, it doesn't matter. I want you to be aware this never happened. Tell your people. This never happened. Okay, I'm going to breeze through some composite images here. The original will be on the left. There might be some quality differences, but check it out. More clouds. You can always tell when Hurley's been monkeying with something because there's clouds involved, right? I mean, and he's a master at it. On the left, that's a hard copy. There is no negative. On the right, that's a copy negative. So I don't trust the copy negative. I think that the clouds have been changed out, even though that is a real photo, and there are diary entries about that photo. Almost overwhelmed. The original's on the left. The original's always going to be on the left. Elephant Island, the original's on the left. You see what he's done here, though. He's made beautiful cloud formations there. Now, we need to blow this up just a little bit because you can see the hut area, you can see the trail up to the lookout. And you can see a little trail here that goes from the main trail up to a little cave in the wall where Shackleton's satchel was with his important papers. Original on the left. Okay, don't let this one confuse you. Original on the left. The Library of Congress has a copy of this photo, and if you look here, look at the standing man. See that? The background's all changed out, right? And like I say, original on the left. That's the actual negative that the RGS has. I always thought this was a composite, but I've come to believe it's not because, see the shadow right here that this man casts? When you get to the negative that the RGS has, which thought to be the original, that shadow's still there, but the man's gone. So, just saying. This, of course, we have the chimney in place, smoke, and a completely different background. I want to finish with this, which is the departure of the James Caird from Elephant Island on when the James Caird departed, okay? This is a cracked lantern slide. This is as close as you're going to get to the original because here's the original. Here's my interpretation of the RGS lantern, the actual negative. And you see here that James Caird's been scratched out, and it has become the rescue. Okay, so this is like Rampart Berg. This didn't exist. This didn't happen. Tell your people. We do have, I'm going to run over by a minute or two with apologies. We have original pictures, right? The one on the left has different variations. There's one, here's another one. We actually do have two other rescue pictures. This one is Elephant Island in the background. Frank Hurley talked about once we got on the ship, I had to wash my face, then I had to take a picture. I think that's the picture he took. Now, he might have taken more that have not come to light yet. This one only appeared about 20 years ago. Okay, and this is Luis Pardo, captain of the Yelcho. He was a Navy man. He shaved every day. And you can't tell it, but he has not shaved this day. So I think this is also a rescue photo, or at least it's before Punta Arenas. That's all I have. Thank you very much for your attention.
So, that's not mine, but you can leave it there. Thank you. So there you have it, Hurley, the original photoshopper. The James Caird departed Elephant Island on the 24th of April, 1916, just a bit before July. Now we have a little end piece before I finish off myself. We have Enda, who's going to come forward and explain, as best as he's able to do at this point, a very exciting potential project.
Thanks very much, Steve. I think as best as he's able to do, being the very, very last so that you don't fall asleep. Can you all stand up a second? Just stand up, shake around. Shake up, yeah. That's me finished, so thanks very much. Sit down now again, yeah, do the boogies. Look, I'm privileged to be last, hope not least, on what's been an extraordinary day. This Shackleton story just keeps giving and giving and giving. It's absolutely extraordinary. What a mixture. So it's a great honor to be here. I just made this slide up this morning, but when I heard David Press talk about the big spark, my spark came, I was in trouble as a kid and I was expelled from school and I took to the sea. And that was my big spark, going on the ocean. And you get to a stage in life where you get a bit older and you want to put something back. So my link with the Shackleton has been the Atlantic Youth Trust charity, which takes young kids on the ocean that would never get the opportunity. If the truth were really known, we take kids and drown them for their parents. But that, sorry, but I took to the sea. It gave me that energy, that life, and as David said at the start, and it's appropriate that David Press at the start, that's the finished. We're all talking about that spark. My next spark was I got on a boat and sailed across the Atlantic in a tall ship, and I arrived in New York by stop working. Oh, really lovely to come back. I was actually amazed when I arrived in New York that they actually had an Irish pub here. And then the next street, the next street, the next street. So the Irish connectivity was so phenomenal. Then my next big spark, which is the one that kind of connected me in with Shackleton, I was just close to the international date line on my 60-foot boat. I was sailing in the Vendée Globe, which is a single-handed around the world race. So my world fell apart. I lost my mast. I was real trouble. Eventually, after a week, in 60, 70 knot winds, I pulled into a place called Port Chalmers. Where the hell is Port Chalmers? It's the entrance to Otago Bay, Dunedin, South Island of New Zealand. You can't get much further away from the world. And I wasn't there very long. Kevin, take a bow. He said, like, I couldn't believe it. He said Shackleton had left in the Aurora from there about 100 years ago to the week. You know, that's a wonderful word in the English language called serendipity. It's one of the most marvelous words. And I was honored then, and I went to a tie, and Seamus Taff is here, and his father Frank and Kevin. What they've done has been extraordinary in the whole Shackleton story. And it's not just an Irish story, it's actually a global story. And there's so many facets to modern life. And then, of course, I don't know, Menson, I think you're online. He's on the ship. Hiya, Menson, with Joe, somewhere that we're not even supposed to talk about. It's also top secret and all his NDAs. So Menson was to actually do this presentation with me, so I feel a bit on my own. And we had this mad idea, you know, like, Jesus, I was always one. I was never to look back. You know what I mean? I was always about the future. And I kind of had a vague, who is this guy, Shackleton? And then I went to Athy. I just got into it, and it's a story that keeps on giving. And I kind of realized, you know, it's like Seamus Heaney, the poet, the future rhymes with the past, you know, and life repeats itself in different ways. And again, my interest, and Niamh Tyrrell will wrap up with a thank you to the club here, is involved in youth development. But we sort of realized that this is a lot more than youth development. It was quite a different project. And as Menson was kicking around, Menson had come across the original plans of the Endurance in Norway. And we kind of said, geez, why don't we build a replica? I said, why not? You know. So we toddled off up to Sandefjord in Norway, where the Endurance was built. And it was an extraordinary trip. We met the mayor and everything else. And this kind of took shape. And then, you know, it's one thing to have a concept. It's another thing to raise funds. But before you actually talk about doing something, you have to do a lot of research. So we managed to bring together 10, Rory Golden, the chairman of the Explorers Club of Great Britain and Ireland chapter, is here. Rory, where are you? And Jane. And Jane. He was one of the first, said, this is great, you know, get to the stage in life, we've got to be involved here. And then as Bruce and Mary Francis are here, Ebony, and David Press, and several others kind of came in on the idea. I even talked to Richard. Is Richard still here? Our esteemed president. Yeah, I can talk about him, so. He's watching. Okay, Richard. But Richard said, well, you know, if you're going to build a replica, why don't you lay the keel in Norway where she was built originally? It may not be the most economic place to finish it. We may be out in Vietnam or some godforsaken place, but our President Trump might prefer for us to build it here in New York, which would be great. So it gathered, so rather than go public, it's not secret, but rather than go public, we raised the seed funding to sort of, you know, originally we were saying, let's build a replica. But the more we looked at it, if Ernest Shackleton were here, would he, 100 years ago, would they have built a replica of something 100 years prior to that? And then we had 3 different concepts. Ocean Infinity gave us time in Southampton. Russell Best, you'll see a little bit about Russell in a moment. And we did a lot of creative energy. We ran several different scenarios. We did a lot of independent research. And I'll finish up with showing what we've come up with, actually, which is quite different. It's like a journey, you know. You go on a journey, and sometimes you'll end up over there, but you have to start on the journey. You have to set the goal and objective. So we had that intense research and development period. I'm not going to video to death, but we have a short little promo. It's about a little bit of Mensen just talking about the project. We'll press a button there and hopefully that will work. Or maybe I'm supposed to do it. Is that? Is the thingy there? Oh yeah. Let's see what happens. This is just Mensen. Just give you an idea, and we've done a lot of really intense brainstorming. David Shaw, one of the club members, we went away to his place in Maine, and we're still at that idea generation stage. But we'll press this. Mensen will just give you a flavor of what we're doing.
Our oceans are the only oceans in the known universe. They are the primal source of all known biology. They are essential for our existence, also our survival. But our oceans are in pain. They're in distress. Now we're all in trouble, and we have to do something about it. My name is Mensen Bound. I'm a maritime archaeologist by profession. I've been an academic all my life. I've been looking at shipwrecks all over the world for 34 consecutive years. But right now, I'm involved in the most exciting and important project of my life. We're going to rebuild Shackleton's ship, the Endurance. It's for exploration, it's for education, and it's for science.
Here we are, 100 years later, inspired by the Shackleton legacy. We want, with Ocean Endurance, to create a further legacy. We need to build on that and propel that forward, and we need your support for that.
Ocean Endurance is a global research, exploration, and education platform. Inspired by the life of Sir Ernest Shackleton, our mission is to power a worldwide movement of ocean health advocates. We have assembled an extraordinary group of partners and talent.
I'm not going to, go on for a while in terms of what we've got. So we took the approach, the work that Steve is doing with the Appreciation Society, the James Caird Society, John Geiger with the Royal Canadian Geographic Society, the Explore Club. We're not going to reinvent the wheel here. So we decided to sort of look at it from first principles. So we said, well, with the why, and Mensen outlined that in the video, the 3 bits: exploration, education, youth development, and science, fundamentally science. There's a great tradition of this club in going to space, but actually we know more about the potholes in the moon than we do in the bottom of the ocean. And that's the new thing we need to get engaged with, which is the environment and saving the world. we're not going to do that, but we can all do a little bit. And so he said, why? What does it look like? What are the core imperatives? Earth observation, education, youth development. These are the workshops that we developed. The operation requirements, Earth observation and scientific research, youth development, exploration through sail. But I mean that is youth development. With technology, we can have literally a floating classroom on the vessel. And this boat can literally, over 7 years, visit 2/3 of the countries in the world. So when we're in India, and one of our seed funders, I know is our Indian partner here, that he's a Shackleton fabulous supporter. You know, when we take that boat to India, we can tailor the content that kids in India, not just superficial, oh, nice pictures were going around, but real meaningful science. And this is the process we've been going through in the last 6 months, if you like, and that's the benefit of the seed funding before we look for the real support. There's a lot of philanthropic interest, but before you talk to that, you really need to have the data, you need to have the analytics, and you need to have a clear vision of where you're going to be. You know, inspire. These are all the concepts we raced through. Role models, ambassadors, communication, curriculum integration, franchise model, systems, on the whole education side. But you'll do that with substance, not superficial science, real experiments. So the vessel has to be designed that is capable of delivering that. And the exploration bit, we need to put money in the meter, do we? And the exploration, are we working here? Yeah. But the exploration bit, so again, and I think this group, many friends here we've made through the project, you know, this is a core group, if you like, and you relax, guys, we're not going to ask you for money now. It'll come. but you know, it's amazing what you can do collectively, but it's one step at a time, and if there's a genuine belief and authenticity, I'll just go back a second. I explained how we went through 3 different independent design concepts. This is just conceptual design. It's about the same size as the Endurance, but it's going to be powered, sailed. We'll have the latest in electrical systems. We're looking at hydrogen generation. There's been a phenomenal amount of using the latest technology, you know, you know, the methodology, the whole approach. There's a whole revolution in materials. This is a concept we've come up with. It's a bit deceptive in size, but that's the sort of ship we're looking at, something that will fire imaginations, that's very, very futuristic. And then we looked at branding, the whole identity. You know, we've a lot of very smart people, and this is not a presentation of the project. We're not quite ready, but this is the sort of process that we've been going through. And we sort of concluded, originally we set out, and sometimes it's amazing when you set out on a journey that you can end up in a different place. But we set out as a kind of a replica concept, so we're not using that anymore. It's a modern day endurance. But it's not to reinvent the wheel here. You know, the work that, for instance, the Royal Canadian Geographic Society are doing with the Quest, and we all heard John talking earlier on, we felt that there was a need for an umbrella organization, a non-profit that would be global. And originally we were saying the Atlantic Shackleton Foundation, but of course a lot of it was all Atlantic to the North Pole, South Pole, but you know, David is in California, you know, you might eliminate the rest. We've put it in global. So it's the Atlantic Shackleton Global Foundation. And that's designed to be a catalyst for all things. So we've got 2 groups of we've got people, seed funders, and we've got what we call strategic partners. And it's been an open door because there's something magical about that whole Shackleton thing globally. And by building that community around it. So it's global non-profit. Mark, where are you? Mark is on the administration governance group. We incubated through the charity in Ireland, through a management company, Atlantic Youth Trust. It's now going to the next stage, which needs to be standalone, and we're creating a US 501, and I'll explain how that's going to be structured. And I keep coming back to this whole leadership thing. When we did our research, and this came across very strongly when we did the workshop with David Shaw in Maine, you know, there are lots of people doing exploration, and that's needed. There's lots of people doing research, and that's needed. And God only knows with mental health and youth development and social and emotional learning and all of that. But the central concept, the very central concept is leadership. And God only knows the world needs leadership at the moment. It's a bit like history rhyming with the future. Things are happening in the world here, you know, even with current leadership. That whole leadership it's a big gap, if you like. And that's fundamental for our planet to go forward. And I think that will be the real benefit. Looking back is really important, but history does have a habit of repeating itself in different ways. So it's up to us to create the future for future generations. And that's really what the Atlantic Shackleton Global Foundation is about, to harness everything that's happening and bring it forward. And we're setting out on that journey. I'm happy to play a part on it, but who knows where it's going to go. It's a great adventure. And the ship fundamentally will serve as a focal point for promoting a generational shift in global attitudes towards ocean health. And I believe we really can make a difference. And again, if everybody chips in and we all come involved and we have a bit of fun, it's a community. You give, you get, you know, people in their teens, boys meet girls in their 20s, people are learning in their careers, their 30s, they're building the network. You create the network and the community about it, and we can create a truly global network. And everything we've done today, that whole leadership, the whole values of what Shackleton is about. That's the aspiration. Just a bit of housekeeping. This is a very simplistic view, but it's now Atlantic Shackleton Global Foundation because it has to be truly global. We're putting in a structure, finance and governance, marketing and fundraising, operations and design. Now, the operations and design is the one we've started because there's no point in doing all the other stuff until you know what it is. And that's creating a very detailed business plan. It's a 7-year plan because not only do you have to build the ship, you have to operate it and send it to the poles, and it has to be capable. And then the actual founding project is Endurance 2. But you know, who knows, we can build power through this community. Again, we're not reinventing the wheel here. It's not another Shackleton Appreciation Society. Steve has come on board and we're part of it, supporting what that's doing. And you know, Steve has got the event in Ireland in 2026, May, and that ties in beautifully with what the Thai is doing. It ties in beautifully what Simon is doing and what the Royal Canadian Geographic Society is doing, what the Explorers Club are doing. It's something, there's something in this Shackleton for everyone. But that's the sort of structure, and you know, my background, when I haven't been sailing on the ocean, I'm involved in the corporate world, and I put in the initial funding to get it going, but it's way beyond my own capabilities. And I say there's 9 others who put in seed funding, but that's just to get the concept going.
We want to commit to generating the next iteration of climatological
So Russell
awareness
Best.
among young people. This is a golden opportunity to do so.
It's dead simple. It's a project that you can't afford not to be part of. if
Andy
you've got the
Tyrrell and
opportunity.
our operations committee.
Shackleton's motto was, by endurance we conquer. And this is what we embrace. To address the ocean's problems, we all need to be more Shackleton. We need to steel ourselves with his determination, his courage, and his leadership. Ocean Endurance is a powerful and exciting platform to help understand and solve the ocean's problems. And it's on us all to make it happen. Let's get to work.
So we've just completed the initial design and the development phase. It's a 7-year, I'm not sure what we're going to be doing next week, let alone 7 years' time. But it's like a journey. You have to set the course, and you never know where you might end up. So we've spent, all of our expenditures has been in the research and development, design,
and the soft costs. And we have enough money to do a good video reel, website, promotional deck, and then you go live. We brought in 10 seed funders at 50K each. We need 5 more before going live. And so if there's 5 people who would like to join that group, it's a very unique group. It's fun to be part of. And then after that, then we'll bring in strategic partners. There's a lot of very significant philanthropic funds. I met Mark Bezos, as one does, the brother of Jeff, at one of the events here, and I said, can we come pitch to you? And yes, but we'll only go when we're ready. We brought in Prince Albert as a patron of Monaco. He had the misfortune to be stuck with me. We're in the Élysée Palace meeting President Hollande of France, and there was a bomb scare. So I spent an hour with Prince Albert. And what do you talk about with Prince Albert of Monaco? Whiskey. He's visited every whiskey distillery in Scotland and in Ireland, and he's got an Irish pub in the castle. So when I finished my solo circumnavigation of the world, I had 2 bottles of whiskey, and we presented one to his Irish pub in the castle, and the other we auctioned off for charity. So, you know, he will come in, but you only get one shot there. You know, you have to have a very detailed, he'll say yes, and his people will analyse it. He's already put funding into the Atlantic Youth Trust charity in Ireland, and he's agreed to be a patron as an extension with this. And Richard Garriott became a patron of the Explorers Club. Again, it was Richard's idea. We could lay the keel maybe in Norway. And of course, the Shackleton link is very important. Lady Alexandra Shackleton has become a patron, and we've connected in very strongly with the Shackleton family in Ireland. And Lady Alexandra Shackleton, she's grew up in London, and her granddaughter, but she's more relatives in Ireland, and she feels the community goes every year to Athy. And this is what we want to do, is build that whole global community. Shackleton is truly a global figure, if you like, and that's what we want to develop. So the whole idea is a global movement, the core fundamental principles, science, exploration, learning, and it's about leadership. It's a big, hairy, ambitious project, but what we want to do is we can't really press the button until we have 60% underwritten. So it's a bit to go, but in the interim, we can create a very dynamic community globally. And of course, when you have that community, you'll get the philanthropic support, but if you have tens of thousands of supporters, that creates power for brands who want to associate with it, as long as the brands sign up to the principles and the ideals. So it's a non-profit foundation. I have no commercial aspiration. We have no problem with people who can be commercially involved, but we're creating that ethos from the start. Menson is not here, but with Menson and the founders, we spent a lot of time thinking about it. So kind of rough timelines. We would hope in by April to have all the marketing collateral ready, and I was talking to Mark to bring aboard a professional fundraising team to talk to the heavy hitters, the global philanthropic funds who can think 2, 3, 5, 7 years out, and it can quantify the benefits, if you like. An old personal interest of mine, I'm involved in a non-profit Global Economic Summit in Killarney in Ireland. David Press came over to it. I'm going to show a little video of it, because you can see a picture of David there. I'm just showing the video to show David. So we have Sarah. Where's Sarah Murphy? Do you want to stand up? Sarah is the CEO of the Global Economic Summit and a Business Post group in Ireland. And they've created a thought leadership event. It's a global thought leadership. Last year, the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, came. She talked about the future of cities. We're big on stability. We're big on sustainability. It's a kind of a thought leadership. If you think of Davos, right? But better weather, better speakers, better fun, and a more balanced approach. And that's what we're doing in Killarney in May 2025, which is quite soon. I'm going to show a little video of that, because we're going to make, sorry to frighten you, Sarah, but leadership is going to be a central part. It's a business event, but leadership is what it's about. Leadership, whether it's in sustainability, leadership in world affairs, And that's a big Central Ireland, and we've talked about this Anglo-Irish thing. It's a link between the United States and Europe, the only English-speaking country in the Eurozone, so it's really quite exciting. And Menson, it's already in his schedule. Do you hear that, Joe? I hope you're listening. It's already in schedule for Menson, and we're going to do a kind of a whole thought leadership on Shackleton. It'll be less about all of the wonderful stuff here, but it'll be all about that leadership component and propelling that, taking the past, history rhyming with the future, and I'm quoting not myself, that's Seamus Heaney, the very famous Irish poet who won the Nobel Prize. And do you know what they gave the Irishman who invented the door knocker? The Nobel Prize. Sorry, it's a bad joke. That's all right. I'm going to digress. So I'll finish up at this point. I'll show just a little 30 seconds of the Global Economic Summit, and then we need friends to engage, to become involved. So thank you very, very much. This will be leadership in May, and looking forward to lots of other events. So we've made a lot of friends here. Thank you very, very much. This is a little bit about the Global Economic Summit to give you a flavor of it, where leadership and Shackleton will be a central theme. So we'll just play that just a little. We just play the first 30 seconds. Hey! We'll finish it at that. I keep coming back to this whole leadership, the whole Shackleton legacy, and that's what it's a part of. Again, thank you for your support. Just sign up and keep in touch. It's a work in progress. It's very exciting to be involved, and from the bottom of my heart, it's just wonderful to be here. And thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Enda. Give an Irishman a microphone, and it's been great. The thing about Enda is he's so passionate, and the project is amazing. So I hope that you were able to follow that, and I really hope this project comes to fruition to honour Enda and his vision. So we're coming to the end. It's been quite an incredible evening, afternoon, a morning, and it feels like evening now. The snow is snowing, and I hope that you have enjoyed yourselves and it's not been too cramped. It's always difficult when you're sitting for a long time, trying to listen to people talking. It can be difficult, and I have to admire you for your fortitude, really. And if you are going to be anywhere near Dublin in May 2026, I shall be running, as I said, a conference for the Shackleton Appreciation Society on Facebook, and you're all very welcome to attend, but just let me know first, because we have to make sure there's enough room for everybody. We don't really have time for any form of panel discussion. I hope you'll forgive me. I want us to get home and get some fresh air in our lungs, and for those people coming to the dinner tonight to better be refreshed when they come back. Just a few very quick things to say. I will just keep it very quick. Mention was made of Harding Dunnett in Simon's talk. Harding Dunnett was an old boy at Dulwich College who passed by regularly the boat, as it was sort of in its outbuilding, feeling very sorry for itself. He founded the James Caird Society, and a lot of his hard work has paved the way for the boat to be where it is now, of course, with people like Simon's input. So Harding Dunnett is the founder of the James Caird Society. He's deceased now. The James Caird Society was founded in 1994, I think. I haven't got time. We'll have another conference sometime, purely on one subject only, which kind of got mentioned definitely by Jamie this morning, but hasn't been mentioned since. The Imperial Transantarctic expedition was in fact a two-pronged expedition. It was two expeditions, if you like, in one. It's so important to know this. On the one side, the Weddell Sea, we've got this incredible story that we've been hearing about all day long. Equally incredible in my book was the saga in the Ross Sea and the men in the ship Aurora who were totally underfunded. Shackleton was a little bit disgraceful, really, in the way that he mismanaged this side of the expedition. The idea being that a group of men would lay depots for him, so as he came over via the South Pole from the Weddell Sea side, he wouldn't starve. He'd had food depots laid for him. These men went through incredible trials even, and 3 men perished. It's quite true that Shackleton never lost anyone in his direct command, but he lost 3 men in his indirect command. And it's questionable as to whether Shackleton ever really gave that side of the Imperial Transantarctic Expedition proper thinking through. And that lasted just a little bit longer than the Weddell Sea saga. So when you talk about the Imperial Transantarctic Expedition, brackets 1914 to 1916, on the other side, it was 1914 to 1917. I'm telling you now, go and buy a book on the Ross Sea Party, because that's what it's really called. That's a sort of a little kind of soundbite, the Ross Sea Party. And you'll be stunned and amazed at that story too. I want to quickly mention Chippy McNish. Now, there's a lot of controversy about Shackleton's chagrin and taking offence during the expedition, the ITI, that's the Imperial Transantarctic Expedition, and therefore failing to award the Polar Medal to, in fact, 6 men, 4 from the Weddell Sea side and 2 from the Ross Sea side. It's quite a saga, quite a story, but I just want to say one thing about Chippy. Yes, it was Worsley's, or was it Hurley's, sorry, plan to build or create 3 holes in the deck of the sinking ship to go and rescue the provisions in the cabin there. But had it not been for McNish's expertise as a carpenter and as a craftsman, those holes would never have been dug through the deck. Everyone would have died. Don't worry about him doing his extraordinary work on the James Caird. We all know that. But in fact, that's a bit of a red herring. Had he not managed to get 3 holes through the deck of the Endurance, there would have been no little boat journey. So think about that one. And yeah, I just want to finish off now. I am going to finish with the words of Shackleton himself. As I say, he was a bit of a poet. And these are words that he wrote, if I can get them on my screen and turn it around so I can read it. So I'll leave you with this sort of thought, Shackleton's own words. We leave our pleasant homelands for the roaring southeast winds, all words of love and friendship, for yearning hearts and minds, for clasps of loving fingers, dreams must alone. Thanks very much.